No doubt you're confused. If you're watching these videos in series, it should be April 29th. I should be at Camp 2, headed up to the Lhotse face today. Obviously, it's not. It's June 6th. Maybe I can backtrack and explain some things. These vlogs are supposed to be daily. Every day is a new story that was produced on that day, uploaded on that day, so all that content is from that day. When I was at base camp, I couldn't upload video, obviously, on that day. I didn't even have electricity in a lot of cases, so I couldn't even edit these things at base camp. So what I did is I tried to take as much video as possible, bring it back with me, and then produce it after the fact. Now, if you're watching this video on today, which is June 6th, you kind of have understood what's happening. If you're watching this years down the road, and I pop up sitting out here, you might be wondering what the hell's going on. I am in the process right now, as of June 6th, editing the episode for April 29th. I finished the 28th, and I was working on the 29th, and I realized that I didn't record one piece, one shred of video, nothing. Nothing exists. I scoured my video. I don't know what happened. I remember the day very well. It was a very important day. As a matter of fact, it was so important that I have to tell you the story of April 29th. Otherwise, you're missing out on a fairly critical portion of the story of my climb up Mount Everest. I did this every so often. I would skip a day on video while I was there, and I was exhausted, I was tired, I was emotionally drained, and all of those things would make for fantastic video, but at that time, with the lack of oxygen and things, I'm gonna make up a bunch of excuses. The bottom line is that I didn't film anything. I did this a few times, and I actually skipped a day or two in the vlogs already. You can trace back and see, but I'm trying to catch up from Everest to today, and eventually I will get to a current daily video that is recorded and edited on that day. But until I do, I'm doing all this catch up on the Everest videos, and I'm trying to produce about 2 or 3 days every day, 2 or 3 catch-up days every day until we catch up to today. So that's my explanation. That's why I'm sitting on my back porch in Ningbo. And spoiler alert, I guess I can say I didn't die. So I feel unfortunate that I have to illuminate a little bit into the future with this. But I'm not going to give any more than I am still alive. And I think that should be pretty obvious. So, April 29th. I'm going to tell you the story. I'm going to try and give you the feelings I had that day and explain why the day is important. We woke up at Camp 2, ready to go to the Lhotse face. This time we were going to go up until we hit Camp 3, make our way past Camp 3 as far as we could, and then turn around and come back down. As you've seen in the previous videos, the weather had been pretty dry. Not a lot of snowfall. The Lhotse face in particular is like this, okay? So with a lot of snow, you can see that the face can be white, full of good usable snow that you can get your feet into and climb. That day, the Lhotse face was half rock, and then the other half was blue ice. The ice that's so dense and hard that you can almost not even get your crampons into it. And we approached the Lhotse face. I was feeling really good. But when we got to the Lhotse face, there's an area where the Lhotse face comes down, and then the glacier kind of starts. And it's at this point, you could see there's a crevasse, there's a break. And the Sherpas who string up the lines for us ahead of our climb were there that day trying to figure out how to rig up the Lhotse face for the climbers that are coming subsequent. we were one of the first teams actually there to do this rotation. We had moved our rotation really early, so we were on the heels of the Sherpas that were actually stringing up and setting up the Lhotse face for us, and you'll understand why that's relevant in a little bit. We got to the crevasse between the Lhotse face and the Khumbu Glacier, and they had what we found out was a temporary ascension point that you had to traverse over a beautiful crevasse and then jumar onto a rope and climb up the face of this crevasse, which was above, and then once you got above it, you were on the Lhotse face, and it kind of arced forward. So there was a certain point where you were climbing and your feet couldn't really dig in, and you're just kind of jumaring up and doing your best to try and stay on the line, move forward, carry your stuff, and get onto the Lhotse face. It was precarious and interesting and beautiful, and you're not going to see any of it, which is really unfortunate and frustrating. Anyways, that was extremely tiring, just to get over and onto the Lhotse face. But once you get on the Lhotse face, you clip into the line and you start jumaring up. And when I say up, I'm talking like an extreme angle here. We're working very hard, and like I said, there wasn't a lot of precipitation, so the foot areas where you were kind of jumaring up, taking a couple of steps, jumaring up, taking a couple of steps, there were no footholds. This was a virgin wall, and it was being rigged up as we climbed. There were two lines actually, one for going up and one for coming down, and the guys who were on my team, Kevin, James, and Jason, they were much faster than me, like I've been explaining, and they actually were quite a distance ahead. They actually got ahead of a team of Sherpas that were rigging up lines, which allowed them straight shot up to Camp 3. I was with a Sherpa named Tendi, who was behind me and basically was behind the anchor, which I became a lot. And we were climbing up, and we got stuck behind the rigging crew. Let me also say it was really windy that day and extremely cold. So cold that the air was going through my helmet, which I was wearing at the time. This is the point where you wear a helmet, okay? You might need it in the Khumbu Icefall, but you really need it on the Lhotse face, because when you're climbing up that sort of an angle, if somebody above you kicks loose a chunk of ice or sets loose a stone from the mountain, that thing is going to tumble down. And we were literally hearing, as we were climbing up, rock, 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 and rocks were tumbling down. At one point, a rock hit my shin, and my Sherpa, Tendi, wasn't wearing a helmet. Don't ask me why. I told him he should have. And I protected his head. I don't think he realized that my shin ended up blocking a stone that would have probably, at the lightest note, given him a solid bruise on his head, and on a heavier note, probably could have given him a concussion and sent him down the mountain. Because once you get unconscious or whatever on the Lhotse face, you're helpless to the elements. And if you can't get your foothold, you could fall back. If your jumar's not quite right, if there's ice on the rope, it could let loose, and then you're sliding down the mountain. It's very, very dangerous. So we're climbing up. It's extremely windy. I'm having a tough time getting my foothold, and we're on this vertical environment. It's not. It's something I've never experienced before. I've climbed before, but none of this kind of climbing, and I was getting freaked out. And when we got stuck behind the rigging crew, we ended up waiting. And I could look up and see the guys continuing on, and they were quite a distance ahead of me. And here I am, stuck behind the rigging crew, getting cold. Now, you hear a lot about lines on Everest, people queuing up on Everest, and the reason that's such a problem is because when your body's moving, you're generating heat, you're in a state of motion. But if you pause, you end up cooling down. And as long as you're moving, in most cases, it's a good thing. So I was stuck. It was windy, extremely cold. I could barely get my foothold, and I'm in an environment I've never been in before. And my Sherpa behind me said, "What do you want to do?" Now, when he said that, my goal was to get to Camp 3 like all the other crew, but I was feeling extremely uncomfortable where I was. Obviously, the whole trip is uncomfortable, but this was an extreme worry. I was like, if I have to wait here for these guys to rig ropes, they're only moving one anchor at a time, and then they're hammering the anchor, and it takes them about half hour at every location. All of a sudden, I feel like, oh my God, I'm going to stand on this mountain, on this angle, attached to a rope, extremely precarious, waiting for this extended periods of time. And meanwhile, my team's already at Camp 3. It's going to be 2 hours before I get there. And I turned back to my Sherpa. I was like, do I have an option? I mean, can we turn around? I mean, am I high enough to where I can say I've accomplished today's rotation section? Because in my mind, if I don't reach Camp 3, I'm kind of disqualifying myself. If I don't reach Camp 3, maybe they don't allow me to continue to climb. Maybe, you know, my mind is flooded with all these thoughts. If I turn around now, am I giving up? Am I high enough? Because the purpose of this rotations is that you get as high as you can. At a certain point, you wait, you allow your body to acclimate, and then you turn around and come back down. And then you've used that, your body has understood that distance and kind of acclimated to it. But here I'm turning around early if I do decide to. I looked up at the Sherpa, thinking about the amount of time I'm going to have to sit in one place waiting on this angle in this precarious situation. I looked up at my teammates already cresting into Camp 3. Then I'm weighing the turnaround versus waiting, and Tendi, my Sherpa, seemed to say it was an option for me to turn around. And I felt like I had experienced the Lhotse face. I had gotten up pretty high, and to wait behind these crews wouldn't do me any good. So I made the choice, and I told Tendi, let's turn around. Hindsight, I don't know if that was the best choice. I should have continued on, but I turned around. Slowly made my way back to camp with my tail between my legs. I was really, really down, and as soon as I got off of the Lhotse face, I regretted it. Because I thought that there was a chance that I was out of the expedition. In my mind, I was thinking this, and it really got to me. And on the walk back to camp, I was just pondering that I just gave it all up because I was tired of waiting. I was ashamed because fear overrode most of the decision. I was really afraid on the mountain. On that face, I was feeling like I might be in jeopardy, but I wasn't. It was just my mind concocting these fears, because I felt good. I mean, my body, in essence, felt good. I was cold and uncomfortable, but that's what mountain climbing is about. But it was more fear than anything that caused me to make that decision to turn around. So I got back to camp, ashamed, frustrated, my hands on my head, thinking about the team coming back from the mountain. Well, what am I going to do? Am I going to greet them? Hey guys, welcome back. Oh, you guys must have had it hard. I turned around. You know, like I had this dilemma of what to do. I didn't know if they were going to be frustrated or angry that I turned around. Some of me was thinking they were going to be like, why is he here? Why is Matt here if he's just going to turn around at the slightest difficulty? Slightest difficulty. It was pretty insane on that face, but still, I turned around early. So I went to my tent. I took a nap. I was like, maybe I shouldn't be here when they get here, because it's just kind of like spitting in their face, in my opinion, I thought. And so I heard them come back hours later after they had now these guys still had a lot of hard work, and they worked very, very hard to get to Camp 3, and here I didn't work as hard, you know, and so there was that issue as well. So they came back, I heard them rustling around. I figured I can't spend the remainder of this expedition in a tent, so I got out of my tent. I kind of was bracing myself for whatever might actually happen. Turns out, more of the same. These guys, hearts of gold, and they asked what happened. I told them, and they said it was a smart move. There was no sense in waiting on the face for these lines to get rigged up just so that you could reach Camp 3, which was only a few hundred meters away anyways. And so they kind of patted me on the back, which was nice of them, and I went up to Kevin and I was like, hey man, am I out? Am I done with this thing? Did I just screw myself? And he's like, no, you know, you've got high enough, you've exposed yourself to this area, this zone to the most part. You got a taste of the Lhotse face. Congratulations. And I felt a huge load off. I also felt like I didn't do as much as I should have, but I also felt like I preserved the trip. You know, it wasn't like I sacrificed my whole trip because I made some stupid decision. So that's the story of April 29th, and I'll get back on track in the current timeline on April 30th. Hopefully I won't have to do something like this again, but if there's an interesting plot point I do have to explain, I'd have to do this. When I get back on track, back to Ningbo and this timeline, I'll get more consistent. Videos will come out on the day of, and I won't be skipping days. But I felt like this story was important. It wasn't like I could just skip over today and then all of a sudden it's April 30th and we're returning from Camp 3 or Camp 2 all the way back to base camp, which is what happens tomorrow's episode. But I think it's important to see what I was feeling when I went up to Lhotse Face. I almost quit, which is not me, so you can imagine how much stress I was under. And yeah, that's about it. I might actually reflect on more of these stories like that might have been missed in video when we catch up to the current timeline, because there's a lot that's missed in the videos, and I, from this point on, my videos get somewhat sparse and there are some gaps in days, and I'm apologizing for that in advance because I have looked at the video. But enough for today's vlog. Join me tomorrow when we go back to Everest Base Camp from Camp 2.